Thank you for joining us today. Today we'll be diving deeper into the fundamentals about Azure for our second of 4 presentations. This one we call the fundamentals. We will log into the Azure Portal, walk through some of the fundamental functions that are available in Azure. Today's topics are going to include discussing resource groups, app services, virtual machines, and storage. While there's a lot more to discuss about Azure, those are the 4 areas that most people work with and need to be familiar with. Before we get into this, we're going to talk a little bit about Opal. Opal has approximately 20 team members with a wide variety of technical expertise and certifications. Opal is also a Silver Enterprise Partner and CSP with Microsoft. Opal strives hard to serve as an extension of your team, helping you to design and deliver technology solutions to help you anticipate and overcome business challenges. With 2 offices on the East Coast, Opal provides quick and reliable products and services throughout the United States. Opal is able to provide a one-stop for your technology needs. Whether looking for enterprise-level hardware, SMB equipment, or even certified pre-owned, Opal can provide the equipment to meet your needs. Opal also provides CSP licensing on Microsoft applications while also customizing any software to meet your needs. Finally, Opal's network services team provides the expertise and knowledge to design, upgrade, and support your entire infrastructure. With Opal's team monitoring and maintaining your network, you will have the latest security protection and meet the industry-verified compliances. Without further delay, I'm Jay Hess, Vice President of Opal Business Solutions. I'd like to go ahead and begin our presentation. Since many of you may have sat through the first presentation in this series of 4, you're probably anxious to actually log into the system, begin looking at the portal, and learn about many of its fundamental features. During our last presentation, I showed you how overwhelming Azure could be. We talked about how they have the security management, the services, the web and mobile, different data types, developer services, storage, networking, Active Directory, you name it, it has it. And it's just scratching the surface. They continue to add more and more all the time. So instead of taking what could be hours and sometimes even days to go through everything, I've selected a few of the fundamental feature sets to discuss as we go through the system today. The first one we're going to discuss is resource group, or Azure. Azure is really like a collection of easy to use, integrated infrastructure and platform services in the cloud that will enable you to help your business build, deploy, and manage solutions. And for this session, the areas we're focusing on, as I mentioned, are resource groups, the app services, the virtual machines, and storage. Security is another primary one. However, that's going to have its own dedicated presentation, as there is a lot of security functionality, and the importance of security in today's society warrants it to have its own dedicated presentation. That is Azure. So we're going to jump in, take a look at the portal, navigate around, and you'll be able to see exactly how Azure looks, feels, and get some of the basic elements of how things are established and created within Azure. So I'm going to go ahead and connect over to the Azure portal. We'll just minimize that for a moment. To connect to the Azure portal, you would typically go to portal.azure.com, and you can set it up so that you can see the dashboard as I've done here, giving me a lot of information, server response times, failed requests, average availability, or you can set it up to come to your homepage. Homepage will give you your recent resources, some quick links to get to for Azure services, and so forth. I like to start with the dashboard. It gives me a clear look into everything that is going on. I can also quickly get to anything else I need down the left-hand side by pinning it as a favorite. So you can see I have resource groups, app services, storage accounts, virtual machines, even security center. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today are all listed there, and they're available for me to get to rather quickly. The first area we wanted to discuss today is resource groups. And what is a resource group? Well, resource groups enable you to manage all your resources in an application together. Resource groups are enabled by the Azure Resource Manager, and the Azure Resource Manager allows you to group multiple resources in a logical way. So that way your life cycle boundaries for every particular resource are contained within it. So what does that mean? For example, a group may contain a website resource. It may also contain SQL databases, relational data, storage accounts that don't store relational assets. So all of that information can be found within one resource group. Some of the benefits by utilizing a resource group, such as one here where you can click into it, all of your resources for that one group can be accessed through one simple, easy to use UI. So you can see I can get to the web portal, I can get to the storage, I can get to the database, all from one UI. I don't have to log out, use a different application, and try to go and access it. I can see all of that information from one area. By clicking on the resource group, you can see I get another menu, and in addition to accessing all of these resources, I also have the capability to look at metrics for just that particular resource. So where I came in and I looked at the resources for the overall, all of my resources throughout Azure, I can now look at a specific resource within my resource group of VCTO. So I can see, take a look at the web portal. I can take a look at the blob storage, whatever it is that I want to see. And as you saw, I can run different filters based on the resource I want to look at, what metric I'd like to look at it from, and then how I'd like to aggregate that. I can even specify line chart, area chart, bar chart, scatter chart. So there's a lot of functionality as I look at each and every one of these. Some of the benefits of utilizing or having Azure Portal and the Azure Resource Manager available, without diving too deep into them, is you have the capability to declare in a JSON document the capability to assign resources. So you can take everything I've created within this VCTO, and let's say I want to create a new one for every client that is utilizing it. So if I have a new client that's going to use this same web application, I can set up a JSON document to go ahead and create the blob storage, the web portal, the database, and have that all automated so that whenever I need it, it automatically runs, creates all of that for me. So that's another nice reason to have this resource group tied to this resource manager within Azure. That obviously creates a smarter and faster provisioning of these resources, so it doesn't take quite as long to get all of this information spun up. And then in addition to that, you have the capability to use different tools that are available. Some of the tools that are available, Visual Studio, utilized usually for development, PowerShell. The combination of Visual Studio and PowerShell give you the capability to set up the automated deployment. I don't want to go too much into that because it is a very advanced functionality, but there are templates that you can start from, and those templates can give you at least some familiarity, and those are found underneath the Quick Start. And the Quick Start would give you the capability to choose templates, walk through, and establish settings. As we go through some of the other areas and talk about resource groups, app services, virtual machines, and storage, you're going to notice underneath monitoring, there's a couple areas here. We have advisor recommendations. The system itself is going to give you what it believes are recommendations to improve your performance, or if you've set things too high. So you can see I've established this so that it has very little security set up on it, and it's going to give me warnings about security. So if I go ahead and I take a look at those warnings, they're all high impact. I can just click on that and it'll start to give me a little bit more detail. So you can always feel secure that as long as your administrator is looking at all of the dashboards that are available to these resources and making the recommended changes, you can feel secure that, or you can feel confident that everything is secure and stable within the environment. So resource groups, just to recap, is just a way to go ahead, group all of these resources that have something in common, whether it's billing, a client, and so forth, and be able to pull that all together into one manageable UI or group. The next topic to discuss are app services. App services it's a service for hosting web applications, APIs, like REST APIs to communicate between different applications, and even mobile backends. You're able to develop in whatever language you prefer, .NET, .NET Core, Java, PHP, Python, Ruby. So you'll find that almost everything's available out here. The nice thing about the app service is applications are run and they scale with ease because it's all within a Windows-based environment. So you get to add the power of Microsoft Azure to your application with security, load balancing, auto scaling, automated management, and you get to take advantage of different what they call DevOps or development opportunities such as DevOps, GitHub, Docker Hub, and other sources that create or host the data. And then you can create staging environments, custom domains, SSL certificates, TSL. There's a lot of stuff that is available to you. So let's take a look at app services and what you would do here. So you can see I've created a couple. I have a web portal. I have another application that's out there and running. But I want to show you how easy this is and the wide variety you have to access different app services that are built into Azure. So if I go ahead and click Add in the upper left-hand corner, you'll notice that I get some thumbnails. Those thumbnails give me a nice idea of what is available in terms of app services right out of the box. If I'm looking for something like WordPress, I can go ahead and click on WordPress. It opens it up in the right-hand side, and I can make sure this is what I'm looking for. I can start a blog or create a website quickly and easily using WordPress. The nice thing about this is I'm not paying any more for WordPress. I'm only paying for what I'm using on Azure. So if this increases my traffic or it increases my data storage, then I will be paying for that. But as for any of these app services, I'm not paying for those in particular. I would just go ahead and I would click create. And if I wanted to create WordPress, it would go ahead and start walking me through a wizard where I can give my app a name, I can set up a subscription, and here's that resource group again. So if this is part of that VCTO resource group, I just select use existing, jump over to that, and I continue down through. I specify database settings, move forward. Everything is in a wizard and is automated. Once again, I'm not getting billed for anything unless I actually create it and start using it in Azure. And then I'm only being billed for the amount of resources I'm using in Azure. Some of the other ones that I wanted to go ahead and take a look at as I expand this, if I click more on the web apps, you're going to notice here are some of the ones that come standard or available just by pointing and clicking. And you walk through the wizard. You can see there's WordPress. You can go ahead and see that you have API management, the capability to interface between different applications through REST API. Drupal, that's another one that some people may know. If you're a fan of PHP, there's Cake PHP. And if you don't know what any of these do, but you know you're looking for maybe a CMS, we can go ahead and click on that, and it will give us more information about what that particular app service does. So we can see here, this is a .NET CMS platform. It's going to create, manage content, digital marketing, whole series of things that are tied into this, and it's ready-made. It has ready-made connectors for marketing automation, Microsoft Dynamics, and so forth. So you get an idea of what this is used for before you even get into it. Go ahead, follow the create steps, fill in the information, and if it turns out you don't like it, you can go ahead and delete and cancel it at any time, and you'll be able to, and you won't be charged for that. I'm just going to scroll down, show some of the other ones here. There's another CMS, MediaWiki. The nice thing about this is as you're looking at this, I'm looking at everything and I can continue to load more and more. If you want to build something that's a web app with MySQL on the back end, it'll give you a starting point for that. There's WordPress, BugNet, and so forth. But you can also break this down into different categories that they've done here. If you want to look at e-commerce only and select more, you'll notice that there's 3 e-commerce setups available within the app services, web app frameworks, and so forth. So you can drill down a little bit further here or even up here within the drop down. So once again, an app service gets you going, gets you ready to work, move very fast. The next step is what most people are probably familiar with, are virtual machines. A virtual machine is essentially like having a server that you don't have to pay hardware for, right? So you're just utilizing the services and the server availability. So Azure VM gives you the flexibility of virtualization without having to buy and maintain that hardware. Let's let Microsoft do it. However, if you do need to maintain, you do have to maintain the VM itself by performing tasks, configuring it, running the patches, and installing the software that runs on it. So Azure is going to give you the capability to spin up the box. You don't have to pay for the hardware, but then you have to go ahead and maintain the patching, configurations, and installation of any software you want to run on it. Some of the ways that VMs can be used within Azure, you can use those as a development and test environment. So an Azure VM is a quick and easy way to create a computer with specific configurations for testing code or testing an application to see how it's going to run. So if you have a particular server that you're thinking about getting internally, you could theoretically spin one up here, test the parameters, see how it would work. Or if you're not sure how the parameters for a server is going to run an application, you can spin it up, test it. If you don't like it, delete it and start a new one. Another good example of utilizing VMs in Azure are the applications that you want to run in the cloud. So much like our VCTO that I was showing you there, that application, there may be a lot of people that are hitting that at any one given time. And so during the day, it may be busier. At night, it may be a little bit lighter. So since the demand for that can fluctuate, it gives us a more economically feasible way to run a server. We don't have to create this big beefy machine. We can get one that we utilize only when we need it. And what I mean by that is it gives us the capability to set it up to expand or be elastic. So as we need more and more resources, it can add additional RAM. It can add additional CPUs if we need to. And then when we're not utilizing it, it goes back down to a lower amount. Once again, we're only getting charged for what we use. In addition to that, if the machines don't get used overnight at all, and it's only during business hours, we can set the VMs to shut down so that they don't even run overnight. That way you're not even being charged for them during the evenings. And finally, it's a great way to extend our data center. So we can go ahead and connect to our organization's network, extend our data center, and have these additional resources out there. So let's, once again, follow the simple process to establish a virtual machine. And in doing so, we select Add in the upper left-hand corner. And it will go ahead and ask us questions. Do we have a resource group we want to go ahead and assign this to? I can go ahead and select one, or I could create a new one. Once again, what makes sense for grouping this with other resources? Is it for billing purposes? Is it for resources that you're assigning to maintain these? Whatever it might be, you want to think about why you're using that resource group. Give the virtual machine a name. Look. And then you can choose a region. So if this particular virtual machine is for an office that's in California, you might want to utilize putting it on the West Coast, or have it in the East Coast if it's on the East. So you can actually select your regions. And then you can go ahead and determine any availability options, the availability zones set. There's a lot of information there. I don't want to drive too much into that. But the next key one is this size. The size here is going to determine how beefy this machine is all the time. In this particular case, we have it set as a standard D2S V3, has 2 virtual CPUs, 8 gig of memory. If we determine that's not big enough, we just click change size. When we click change the size, what you're going to realize is it gives us the opportunity to look and see what some of these machines are going to cost. You can see some of them can get as low as $20 a month based on estimations in our region, all the way up to $218 a month. This is just for standard general purpose. If I wanted to look at all types, I could go ahead, remove that flag for general, and we can see you got memory optimized, another general purpose category, compute optimized. And you can see that the prices all changed, the functionality changes, the speed, basically the strength of the servers and what they're used for. But you can see we can go up to 128 gigs of RAM, 32 data disks. So there's a lot of functionality and capability that we have available here. Then you go ahead and you give it an administrator account, password, and so forth. Then you can set up your port rules. I'm just going to walk through some of these. If I continue through the setup, it'll allow me to specify what type of disk, SSD, standard SSD, premium, regular HDD. I can go ahead and add those in there. Gives us the capability to set up the networking, any virtual networks, the public IPs, and so forth. Any load balancing we want to put into place. Management for boot diagnostics. You can see the settings there. Identity, auto shutdown. I mentioned that before. Automatically shut down daily. Enable backups. Any guest configurations, tags, review and create. So you just walk through those steps and it's set up. Now keep in mind, you do have to maintain these machines in terms of the patches, the updates, and going through and installing any software you want to run on them. So finally, the last thing we're going to cover today is storage, Azure storage. And storage, basically there's a lot of scalable object stores for data objects. There's a file system service for the cloud, a messaging store for different messaging, a NoSQL store. You're going to find everything in these different data services that you would need for any type of application, whether you're streaming movies, wanting to display images, photos, a network file share. It's all here and all available. Those data services that are available, the different types are blobs, files, queues, and tables. So an Azure blob, it's basically a massively scalable object store, usually for text and binary data. And we'll go into this. I'll show you a little bit here about the store real quick. Azure Files, that's a managed file share for the cloud or on-premise deployments. So think of it as your network file share. Best way to describe how you would think of an Azure file. Azure Queues, it's a messaging storage for reliable messaging between different application components. And then the last one is a NoSQL store, which is Azure Tables, and it provides a schema-less storage for structured data. Most people are utilizing Azure Blobs or Azure Files for what they're trying to utilize. And you'll see here, we have different types of storage that we're utilizing. We have a blob storage right here that we are utilizing for files, Excel files that just get dropped out there, stored, and are easily accessed and then displayed. So to go ahead and create a new storage account, once again, you're seeing a trend here, right? We've done this in resource groups, we've done it in app services, we've done it in virtual machines. We're going to do the same thing in storage accounts and click add. Once we go through the add functionality here, you'll notice that we just put in some basic information. Assign it to a resource group again. Give the storage account a name. Choose our location, what type of performance we want to have. Once again, use the information icon to go ahead and get information about your different options. What type of account are we using? Is this going to be general purpose? Is it going to be blob storage and so forth? And then the different types of replication that may be available. And you can see that you have the local, you could do it by a zone, you could do it by location, which is your geo redundancies, and then you can do a read access and so forth as well. And then you want to use a tier. The different tiers here, obviously using a blob storage and so forth. You might have a hot access. In other words, the data is being frequently accessed. Cool access is when you don't access the data as much. Obviously, if you're accessing the data a lot more, the resources have to be there to support that. it's going to cost a little bit more than the cool storage. Some of the other settings on the storage accounts: security, whether you have secure transfer enabled, comes enabled by default. Virtual networks allow access from selected networks, all networks. Data lake storage, you can see you could enable it, disable it, and you'll notice that you'll have a hierarchy there. We can talk a lot about data lake storage and what that means and what the definitions are. But once again, due to time limits and constraints, I don't want to go into all of that. You can put tags on this as well, so that it's easy to go ahead and find tagged pairs to categorize resources, consolidate billing, whatever it might be, run reports on. And then when you're all done with that, you go ahead and you create it and it's ready to use. It's as easy as that.